Hello everybody and welcome to SFF180 and Night 5 of Halloweek 2016. Thank you all for joining me. On tonight's episode, a musician from Harlem finds himself drawn into a terrifying ritual designed to awaken something from the ocean depths in The Ballad of Black Tom. Thank you all so much. Once again, Thomas, your illustrious host as always. Okay, confession time. I dearly love the stories of H.P. Lovecraft. And I'm not even sorry. I especially love them for that quality about them that his detractors most seem to despise. That verbose, antiquarian prose style in which words just pour forth in a deluge in an attempt to describe the indescribable. It's a style that Neil Gaiman has referred to, fondly, as a clotted adjectival froth, which is the kind of phrase you can really only get away with saying if you talk like Neil Gaiman.
There's this sort of strange clotted adjectival froth.
See? Now, of course, the criticism of Lovecraft that resounds most forcefully today has to do with his racism, which was especially xenophobic and intense even by the standards of his day, and which, although in not all cases, still managed to work his way into his fiction enough times to matter. For instance, his classic The Shadow over Innsmouth was really all about the horrors, as he saw it, of race mixing. But perhaps the most reviled of his stories is The Horror at Red Hook, which was published in Weird Tales in 1927, and it's the story of demonic doings in the Brooklyn neighborhood of Red Hook, in which an Irish detective named Thomas Malone leads a raid into a squalid tenement only to discover a nightmarish hellscape and evil rituals taking place deep in the basement. The story isn't well loved even among Lovecraft's fans, and even Lovecraft himself went on to disavow it, calling it rambling and not very good. But its portrayal, its degrading portrayal of Red Hook's immigrant population as little more than subhuman mongrel hordes, is what has left a lingering stink over the decades. Now, one of the great things about art, of course, is that it is not just there to provide us with mindless distraction and entertainment. Art at its very best is an act of dialogue, and that is exactly what Victor LaValle has done with his novella, The Ballad of Black Tom. An African-American writer who grew up a fan of Lovecraft's work only to find himself having to come to terms with the man's racism as an adult, LaValle has channeled his conflicted feelings, as he describes them in the book's dedication, into a cracking reboot of Lovecraft's original Red Hook tale that reframes the original's racism into an indictment of the cultural norms of the time that validated it. Coming at a time when such disgusting attitudes are once again finding purchase in too many areas of mainstream culture, it's a response whose time is nigh. LaValle keeps a number of Lovecraft's original ideas as well as his story's two main characters, Thomas Malone and Robert Soydom, but he gives everything a new context. For instance, those immigrant mobs who were drawn to Soydom's rituals in the original story? Well, here they're just more victims of a wealthy, privileged white man's manipulations, as Soydom plays upon their very real, legitimate anger and frustrations in order to lure them into a situation from which only he intends to benefit. Now, LaValle's protagonist is a young Harlem man named Tommy Tester, guy with minimal talent for the guitar, but a real knack for the arcane. Now, in this world, as well as in Lovecraft's world, it is known to a select few people, and even taken for granted, that powers beyond human reckoning really do exist, and we'd all do better to just let sleeping things lie. And Tommy is one of those people. As the story opens, we find him on a well-paying job delivering a magical tome to a lady who lives in Queens, but he has carefully torn up one page from the book because he knows exactly what kind of trouble that book can cause. Now, we follow Tommy through a 1920s Harlem that, on the one hand, feels vibrant and alive, but where, on the other hand, not much has changed, from then to now. Police, for instance, think nothing at all of emptying their guns into an unarmed black man and then claiming self-defense later. Tommy encounters Soydom, who offers him way too much money to play guitar at an upcoming party that he is throwing at his mansion in Flatbush. And Soydom, in turn, is a suspicious character being shadowed by Detective Malone, who is himself another one of these men very sensitive to the otherworldly. Detective Malone here has an appallingly noxious partner, a guy named Howard, which might be a little on the nose, but It's a good jab. Long story short, Tommy discovers that Soidom is basically a straight-up warlock who plans to awaken a fearsome ancient being he refers to only as the Sleeping King in order to cleanse the world and make it anew. But Tommy has some plans of his own. Now, where Lovecraft's original story may have been tedious and rambling, LaValle's is a tightly coiled spring that knows exactly when to unleash itself at full force. Now, I have criticized some Tor.com novellas in the past for attempting to do too much within a very short space, but The Ballad of Black Tom feels perfectly structured right at the length it is. It's a story of injustice on the one hand, and of righteous anger and vengefulness, but it's also one of regrets and of a lingering sadness that our world just can't bring itself to be any better than the way it is. And it's a story that works not because it disrespects or seeks to tear down Lovecraft's horror legacy, but because it understands that sometimes our heroes are broken people. And what we all need is a better world where none of us has to be broken anymore. And that is all I have time for on tonight's episode of SFF180, everybody. Thank you once again so much for joining me. Tune in tomorrow night at midnight Central for the next installment of Halloweek 2016. And remember, the most important thing, these are reviews. You're not always going to agree with me, but if you enjoyed watching, please hit the like button, share the video, and above all, please subscribe if you have not done so. That is how SFF180 grows as a channel. And until I see all of you awesome people next time, spooky reading.